Hey everyone, welcome to Module 8, also known as the last module. So first of all, congratulations. That means you've made it, almost. The first thing I need to touch on is the same thing I started with last week, and that's about how important our final ultimate due date is. Sincerely, I have less than 48 hours from midnight Sunday until Tuesday afternoon to grade all the outstanding work and post the final grades for the registrar. I'm not telling you that to make a case for, what a hardship it is for me, but to let you know I simply do not have any leeway for taking work that is late once our final deadline is passed. So do your absolute best to meet that deadline. And if you can't, then get in touch with me as soon as you can so we can explore some options. Now, as I say in my closing announcement for week 7, we should think about what's happening in this module as part of an intentional frame for our studies, meant to highlight them. Our big purpose in the class has been to speak to the development of modernism. To commence that, we started by examining local color and naturalism, two really important genres that give us a sense of what was happening in the US right before modernism came into being. We can think of these genres dating to, around the year 1900 as the nascent trends that actually developed into modernism. And as I said at the time, just as, a little bit of proof, Hemingway, one of the most successful and famous of the modernists, quoted himself as stating that the naturalist writer Stephen Crane was one of the best authors in the US, and their style of prose has been so often compared that it's a fairly safe bet that Hemingway modeled his style on that writer. So there's a direct link. If even if we can't see the thematic links, but I think we've explored those pretty well. So now that we're closing things up, it's equally important to situate our sense of modernism with what comes after it. The rest of the 20th century and on to our own day is given the very broad label of being postmodern. Now, the first thing I want you to do is just consider that. We don't particularly have a name for what has happened since modernism, except by making reference to it. We define our own time by saying, not as it was before, and just leave it open-ended. So our big question is obviously that, how is what we do today not like it was before when it was modernism? And the answer is tough because it's a little, it's a little abstract, but it is possible to see. When we started on modernism, I gave a small talk about shifts in philosophy and the continued but troubled path that structuralism had moving into the 20th century. And again, just to reiterate, structuralism is the idea that there are connections between everything, and in a very Newtonian law of physics type way, that we can discern how patterns in the world and in the universe work. And if we put enough of these patterns together, we can understand the way everything works. All right, and take that on down to even understanding, how humans work. All right. What I suggested was that the problems of modernism, the alienation, the disillusionment, the subjectivity, were in constant struggle with a feeling that it was still possible to bring our collective mental forces to bear and find those patterns that would lead us to a big, broad understanding of everything. Now, one of the big trends that paralleled modernism, and this is just as an example for how this was working during modernism, was the philosophical point of view called existentialism. That operated from the idea that all we can really know is ourselves. Now, that might seem like a big bring down from the goals of structuralism to understand, life, the universe, and everything. But it is a safe and steady foundation, a place to start. If a person could know the self, then that would be a center to build on and get somewhere. All right. So, baby steps, but still heading somewhere, heading towards that idea of structuralism. So up until about 1970, the strength of ideas like that just really got watered down. That's really the only way to say it. That uh, I would I would use the phrase that people just gradually lost faith in them. All right, and then around 1970, philosophers started thinking about what do we really think. What can we do about this loss of faith in it? What can we say about it? And what happened about that time was that essentially they just gave up on the whole idea of structuralism, period. All right. And that is the point at which things really change from, being flavored by modernism into things that were truly postmodern. All right. Um, so the thing is, how do we define the difference of having given up on structuralism in literature? Now, the only big difference between the way it worked with structuralism as it appeared in modernism and the way it appeared after structuralism was given up and we're in the post-structuralist time is that everyone formally acknowledged that we were fundamentally, and by we I just mean humans, fundamentally, essentially incapable of ever getting that big picture view that connects everything. However, rather than thinking of this in terms of something lost, thinking of it as a failure, post-structuralism figured this as, well, kind of a natural human strength if we thought about it the right way. What I mean is, if we are not all working towards combining our visions of reality into one shared concept, that means that every individual vision of reality has equal validity and equal right to expression. So literature goes literature goes from, again, if we think in terms of the 19th century and its logical, expression of realism, where it's all about explaining how people's thought processes work without really showing people's thought processes in any way that goes on in anybody's head, to what happens in our literature at the end of the 20th century. Then we've got we've made these huge leaps where essentially the doors were open to whatever the imagination could do, and that could be represented as literature really for the first time. So, for example, we had works like Toni Morrison's Beloved, and that's told from multiple perspectives with jumps in time, building narrative in the past and present at the same time. And again, that isn't something that is possible without, opening the doors about what is philosophically possible. All right. It's actually a representation of how subjectivity can be a strength rather than something that is tearing us apart, as it was in modernism. And we also had things like modern absurdities like Don DeLillo's White Noise. And that book makes our paranoias and anxieties about our daily life into the real drama of our time. And it's funny and stupid, but somehow true. So it's like, and those ironies that we talked about in modernism are still at play, but now they're at play to essentially tear down, what it is to be human, what it is to live your life as we all do, and to, give you a fresh perspective on what that means. So I could go on and on, but I'm conscious of the time. So I'll just thank you for hanging with me this far. And by that, I mean, in this video and in the class. I sincerely have had a ball teaching this class. I have enjoyed interacting with everybody. I wish we all had more time to work together and learn together. It has been a real pleasure. As usual, if anybody needs anything, if anybody has any questions about wrapping things up, and in the future, if you ever need anything, I'm not going anywhere. So always, write to me if you need some help on anything, and I'll get back with you. All right. And I can't say until next time, but maybe in another class. Till then, adios.